Welcome back to another Service Management Leadership Podcast. I have a great guest, somebody that's been on with us before, Rob Akershoek. Rob, how are you today?
Yeah, Jeffrey, thank you. Yeah, I'm doing very well, thank you. And it's nice to be back at your, I must say, a show, right? Because it's really popular.
But I appreciate your enthusiasm. Like, I'm always passionate, and not everybody runs on that much fuel like you do and I do. And so I appreciate it. So
I get a lot of energy with IT management topics. And sometimes you could argue, why is that? Why is IT service management, IT management interesting? Because it's not primary business capabilities, right? But and I got some friends in IT as well, and they're looking at more SAP world and CRM and business or business enterprise, really enterprise solutions. But at the other hand, I say, well, IT management is the fuel, the engine, as you mentioned, right, to deliver these digital services. So it's very interesting and getting more and more critical capability to become a digital company. So I think it's a critical business capability to have, IT management in general. Yeah.
I agree. And I think it's a lot about how do we do better, right? Like, we have to acknowledge there's room for us to do better. We're in an ever-changing world. How do we do things better? And that's where I come from. So one of your recent LinkedIn posts caused me to reach out to Rob, and it was on value stream management. And I just thought, hey, this is a great topic for us to talk about. So what is it? How do people engage? Because I know they're doing this anyway, right? I mean, we do value streams anyway, and value streams are much discussed. So what is value stream management?
Yeah, I did a recent presentation on this topic, value stream management, but maybe value stream, we all talk about value stream nowadays, right? The IT for IT talks about the value streams. ITIL 4 now talks about value streams. We had Scaled Agile Framework talk about value streams, where you organize your people, your resources around value streams to generate the value for the customer. So value streams is relatively new, you could say, but not new in that sense, but it's very popular and it's gaining popularity. Now, value stream management is basically the next step of that, is say, how do I manage my value streams? So it's not just implementing them once, but continuously improve them. So, and that's where value stream management is a key concept nowadays, because IT or digital nowadays, there are multiple value streams. It's not just the software engineering value stream from idea to production. But if something breaks, like we have an issue, like last week or the last month, Log4j, we have a vulnerability and we need to fix it. So it's detect to correct, vulnerability to remediation. That's a value stream. How do we detect issues? How do we then solve them? How do we get the right team involved? And nowadays, IT, or it was not just nowadays, but it's very complex. There are many different processes involved in getting something fixed. It's not just incident management. You need configuration management, you need knowledge base, you need deployment tools, you need test management. So now we need to bring all these things together in an integrated value stream. And that basically requires that you design your value streams, you implement them, you continuously measure and evaluate and improve. And that's basically value stream management, right?
So I really like that you talked about improvement, because we live in this dynamic, fluid world. And if nothing that in the last 2 years has taught us is don't take what you have today and assume it's what you'll have tomorrow. And so I see that as evolving within an organization. Is that somewhat how you see it as well?
Yeah, you mean like it's never finished, right?
Right.
But you see that many organizations are not a learning organization. You feel that every 5 or 6 years they are redesigning everything, replacing some tools and practices, and it feels like, did you actually mature over time? Do we now monitor our services better? So, or is our CMDB now getting better? So we need to continuously mature those capabilities instead of we always fixing things, but did we really mature over time? And that's why hopefully we can achieve that by focusing on value streams or end-to-end, right? Improvements.
So I have a loaded question for you, Rob.
Okay.
How would somebody try to measure if their value streams, part of the management side is measuring? How do we measure to ensure that we have we're focused on value, and not measuring some other stream, and that we're making progress?
Yeah, that's a good topic, because measurement is a key element of these value streams, right? So, and as you probably know, there are different value streams. That I think to start off with, like in this picture behind me, I show a number of value streams, but we have like the traditional software engineering value stream is like translating a business idea into something in production. So that typically got value metrics like how long does it take to get something that the business needed to get it really in production, that people get using it, the mean time, the end-to-end time that it takes. But then you're not finished yet because now it's in production and I need to continuously improve it. So how long does it take to capture new ideas and then put it in the backlog and get it into the market? It's like called this value increment. So you're starting to measure those kind of things, like how often can I release? How large is a release? Is it how many issues did I got when I released something? Like maybe it's changed success rate. So those kind of metrics. But you need to think about the customer in mind. What kind of metrics do I think are important? Now, that's not easy because it's not just single metrics, right? It's not just how long did it take to get something in production or how long did it take to fix something. It's also about maybe risk and compliance. Yes. Did I get my services compliant? So it's also about technology depth in there. So you need to balance all those kind of metrics: risk, the value, the costs, user experience, and things like that. And that's what we need to balance in these value streams. Yeah.
Yes, and you touched on many points that I would love to dive deeper, but I want to take it to the next step. So organizations out there, they're used to doing value stream, stickies on a wall and mapping it and all that fun stuff. And now you're talking about, hey, let's not set it and forget it. Let's manage this. How would organizations take that step into incorporating this value stream management into how they do work?
Right. Now, and that's a key element indeed. So let's first start with, do I know my value streams and are they visualized somewhere? Because if you go to many organizations and you ask them, how do you get something that the demand comes in and how does it flow through the IT function that something is delivered in production? Or if somebody requests something from a portal, how does it get actually fulfilled and delivered? Or we get a security incident coming in. How does it actually get evaluated and then resolved through a team? So how does work flow through the IT organization? Now, that's the first step. Understand how that is done across the different teams, across the different value streams, which is challenging. So that's first. Do I understand how work enters the organization, flows through the organization? And that typically requires kind of sometimes they use value stream mapping, like in the back here, like you see, what are the activities I do from, let's say, idea to production, or vulnerabilities detected to resolution? What kind of practices do I use? What kind of tools do I use? And the data, because nowadays we talk about data-driven IT organizations. So it's really about, can I get traceability, from an incident that is detected to the actual resolution? So it's tracing not just how long it took, but also who was involved, can we improve things, and so on. So, and that's where you think about, how do I get this end-to-end design basically in my head and see that and everybody understand that, and then we start to measure and continuously be able to improve that. And in the past, we typically focus on individual processes, like we have an incident management process or change, or maybe it's a test, separate processes, but you never had those end-to-end visualization, how work was delivered from end-to-end perspective. And that's what we now need to do, is how can we create that end-to-end visibility and traceability? And that cannot be done on a paper, on a wall.
Right.
So nowadays you see a whole new tooling categories in the market, value stream management tools, but it's actually, if you think about the traditional, let me show on the back, let's say deliver a new product release, that's typically, how do you combine different solutions like your backlog tools, your CI/CD pipeline, your test management, how you connect all this together so you get end-to-end visibility and traceability of the data to improve yourself and also provide information to your stakeholders. And that's where value stream management practices come along, right? How to do that.
So another loaded question, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
So I see this stretching across all of, and since I always work with the assumption that technology isn't just IT, it's a business. Every business is a technology company. And so these value streams are not IT, but they're business value streams. And if that's the premise, how does this look in an org structure? Because you think of governance, you think, you know what I'm saying? Because it's not like a service management office, because it's, anyway, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, well, it's good maybe to mention, because there are a few things in there. So the business is organized around value streams nowadays as well. But here I make a distinction between the business value streams, let's say hire to retire, or it's a bit like the business end-to-end customer journey management. So the business has value streams and they have application to support those value streams. So here I'm talking about the IT value streams. How do we generate those services and applications to underpin the business value stream? So we actually have two value streams, the business value streams, and you're absolutely right that the business value streams, people are organized around the business value streams, right? Like you have typically a value stream owner, and the value stream owner understands, basically is end-to-end accountable for the value stream, a business value stream. And typically there's an architect involved, like a value stream architect that can design these end-to-end. So imagine you have like an insurance company that has a value stream for, let's say, car insurance. So the car insurance is my value stream, but they share services for other value streams like the CRM system and the billing system, but they still need to optimize the customer journey for these value streams. So it's always challenging, but typically they try to put resources in this value stream. Now, from an IT value stream management perspective, I'm looking more at, if you have these business value streams with people in business and IT working together, what kind of IT value streams do they have? They design the application, build it, test it, deploy it. Maybe an end user want to request a service to the application and it's fulfilled. So, and then you see that the IT value streams are very generic, almost business independent. Whether you are an insurance company or a retailer, you almost have the same type of IT value streams. Like, how do I translate demand? How do I resolve issues? Basically, there are four main value streams, like new demands from a portfolio perspective, translated into vision, a new enhancement request for an existing product, or a request that I get from the catalog that people would like to have, like I want to have access to this business application, or I have an incident that needs to be fixed. That are the key four value streams, but there are more in IT. For example, I need to monitor costs for IT and build my customers. There is a kind of cost value stream in IT as well. And maybe risk and compliance, like detect an issue and then resolve it. So that's what I mean by the IT value streams. They're very generic in nature, but they can be resolved by the same set of capabilities for different teams. Right? And we need to optimize the journeys for IT in this way. Yeah.
So I'm all for loaded questions today.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So when I hear you talk about this, it's very intriguing, but it sounds vaguely familiar to services, right? Where you have business services and they're underpinned by IT or technical services to support. Is this similar in terms that it's focused on the value streams?
It's not that it is related in that sense, but maybe coming back to the business value streams, you like take example of a hire to retire value stream, like we have an employees onboarded and needs to be, so that typically is closely related to the services like HR services, like onboarding a new employee, for example. In IT, you have many different applications that be able to support that, like an HR system and a training system and so on. But from an IT perspective, often the value streams are independent of the service. So take for example, a DevOps pipeline. Yes. And that is, like say, the idea to production value stream. How do we translate value? That is independent on the services you provide, right? Is it an HR service? They can use the same value stream. Is it a finance? Because the IT value streams are about design, build, test, deploy. A lot of them is common. But you are right that that is a service by itself. Nowadays, you see that the DevOps tool chain becomes a service for the digital teams, for the DevOps team. So we have a platform team that basically supports the value stream of idea to production. And you can be onboarded on that as a team to deliver your services. So it becomes more like a platform almost to deliver digital value.
Gotcha.
But then the value stream becomes almost like a digital factory, like a pipeline that you can assemble many different products on this, but the value stream itself is still similar kind of flow.
So the value stream, and I'm not even getting into the ITIL 4 version. I'm talking about but what you're talking about is the way the value streams navigate through the services. I say navigate, what I mean? Because different ones may navigate through incident management or whatever, different, right? You know what I mean?
Correct.
Like if I want to you say detect resolution, right?
Yeah.
That's going to look different depending on what HR system versus,
Oh, that's what you mean. Yeah.
you know what
No,
I mean?
indeed.
Like it's going to navigate differently. It's kind of the
Correct.
way one river will twist and turn in different parts of the terrain as it, goes through.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. There is a difference, but that's probably more data driven. Like if you have 1,000 services, let's say your environment has 200 applications, and it doesn't mean you need 200 different value streams to
Right.
manage detect to correct.
Right.
So hopefully there is a kind of generic value stream detect to correct. Like how do I monitor my service? How do I detect something is wrong? And how can I notify their stakeholders? So if I onboard a new service, they can be onboarded on this value stream. I don't need a separate value stream for the HR service in this,
Right.
for this detect to correct, because we can leverage existing components like monitoring your CMDB in the IT value streams, right? But you're absolutely right that the teams are different. Sometimes I need different monitoring components for my SaaS applications versus running on Azure. And that's where value stream analysis comes in. That for each type of service, you might need to tweak that, right? So you have a generic value stream like detect to correct, but in monitoring isn't a good example. If I have a SaaS application, I need to set up monitoring slightly different than maybe I have an on-premise application running on mainframe, let's say. It's a different
Yes.
monitoring tools involved. So, and in that sense, it is indeed very specific in many cases to the technology and the service, but in the general, as you see in the back, is a generic, what does good look like from end to end? And then you can use value stream mapping as well to diagnose how well am I doing in my value stream for my services. But the idea with value stream management is that there is a kind of almost a standard template that if you introduce a new application for the first time, right? Let's say there's a very good new idea. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. You just want to say, okay, I'm going to develop this new product using the standard CI/CD pipeline, which is basically the requirement to deploy value stream. I can onboard my application on monitoring. I can do the same for security and identity and access management. I can easily get all those value streams linked. And that's why it's so important to start off with, what are the value streams I need in IT or in digital? And typically we've not defined them very well. So you need to think about, and that's my picture here. You say, there are like 6 or 7 key value streams you need to be good at in your IT organization. And we talked about, let's say, detect to correct. We need a good capability to basically make sure that our services are continuously operational. And it's not just an instant process. It requires monitoring, a good CMDB, it requires service level management, good knowledge base. So if there's something happening, I can fix it, event management. Maybe I need basically processes around notification and alerting. So it's a combination of different ITIL practices and detect to make that work. That's the end-to-end value stream.
Yep. And I appreciate your indulgence, but I see, well, one of the things that I think is really a layer of complexity, and I appreciate you mentioned the cloud, but I also think such a complex service provider world that we live in now adds another layer to the picture, because the value stream may have, depend on which, service or which, what we're supporting, it may have different cast of characters that are running this value stream, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's, you add a nice, interesting component there, your multi-vendor landscape.
Yeah.
And indeed, if you decompose your, let's say, your application or service down to, I use maybe cloud components, I have a third-party vendor I'm involved in, I have different teams, like maybe there's a network team that I am independent on. You're right, that unique aspect of your service that needs to be enabled by all those value streams. You're absolutely right. So suddenly you have to deal with 2 vendors and I need to integrate with them. And I need to manage technology refresh with them, for example, or new releases. Absolutely. So that's the challenge, that it's a unique combination of teams involved in your service that makes that challenging. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And multi-vendor is a challenging, because each of the vendors typically have their own, let's say, processes and tooling landscape, let's say their own value streams, right? And you need to integrate with the vendors as a seamless kind of end-to-end value stream. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I come off of this, I live in a world where because I have 2 teenagers, that I think we get what we incentivize. So when you mention the multi-vendor landscape, we get what we incentivize on how we merge our value streams. Correct or incorrect?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But you see that nowadays with it's more like a value ecosystem, right? It's not
Yes.
just a stream sounds like very linear, but it's a network, almost like a value network nowadays we talk about. So, and on the business side, you see that we work together with business partners in our ecosystem together. It's really a value network where our customer journeys and value streams are, in different organizations are involved in that. Yeah.
It's interesting. And when you say that, I picture, so I see the world in pictures. I see it as an ocean, and they're just paths, if you're going from point A to point B, you take this route. And those of us who are not nautical, experts, we don't see it, but there are, paths that go through the ocean that are well traveled, because that's the way they're supposed to be. And that's how I see these value streams, even though the world doesn't see it, because from the customer point of view, or the business side, they don't need to see what's behind the curtain. They just need to see, am I focused on the right thing, and am I achieving the right thing, the right outcomes?
Yeah. So, but the value stream, maybe there are two perspectives. Like the customer journey end to end, that typically is the business for the consumers to look at. Value stream management is also an internal tool, if you will, to improve your process. So there you zoom into things that the customer might not be interested in, but I need to make sure that is like your integration with your vendors. You make sure that those are covered, but for the end-to-end customer journey, it's invisible. And the nice thing about the value stream management approach is that you don't matter where it's performed, by which team or which vendor. It's all part of your value stream, including the handovers, and that's where you measure. So why did it take so long? Yeah, because the vendor, I need to raise a request for a vendor to do something. Imagine you're a software value stream that you want to deploy something in production, but because of your outsourcing contract, you need to first raise a request at the vendor, that maybe they even need a project code to do so. And it's a kind of almost like an additional step that delays things because you don't have a flexible sourcing model. Those things become visible if you look at this and say, okay, how can we fix this? And typically that's where we already had value stream mapping exercises like handovers, wait times, and things like that. But now with value stream management, where you say, I'm going to cultivate that and even monitor that continuously and continuously see what can we improve across all the teams.
Yeah. And I when you were saying that, I was thinking the business customer doesn't see that. It doesn't see. No, it's like you walk. It's like you walk into a counter service restaurant, right? You order, you say, I want this, and I don't want that. So you co-create a little bit. You pay the money, and they bring it to you. You don't care who the supplier is. You might care what the cook looks like. There may be some things, but you don't see it. You judge the output and say, is this my desired outcome or not?
Yeah, indeed. So for the customer journey that's sitting in the restaurant, it's just the experience you get. But if in the kitchen at every time of the meal they have to do a contract or a request assigned to another vendor and wait before that is shipped, then you can imagine, hey, it takes a long time. But the customer starting to complain at you and say, why did it take so long? Yeah, because I had to wait for vendor X. They only find that an excuse, right? But you'll be amazed how many DevOps teams are still dependent on external vendors in the ecosystem. Maybe there's just traditional hosting vendors, the network vendor for firewalls. We have a team for identity and access management that gives me the access rights, and so many on. And that's where I think value stream management sits in and look at the bigger end-to-end picture and try to solve all those issues in the flow of work in your IT organization.
So I want to end. This has been a great conversation, Rob, and I appreciate your time and your indulgence. There's one thought in the back of my mind, and maybe it's because I've been in the IT world a long time, maybe too long, depends on who you ask. And that is governance. Like somebody's got to sit up high enough to make sure, hey, the business is getting what they want, it's cost effective, risk, compliance. I mean, somebody's got to oversee all of it in the end to end, right?
Yeah, and that's the challenge in governance, right? I think we have two types of governance, right? One is that, are we doing the right thing in a sense, like you mentioned, did we deliver the value? Did we deliver on promise? Is it secure, safe, and compliant? That's more like, did we agree? Did we deliver what we agreed? That kind of, and also compliancy and sustainability nowadays, right?
Right.
That's one. But the other is also in during the development of a service or operational, do we have the right process and practice in place to make sure that we can continuously improve? So it's like the delivery methods, like we use a lot of practices like DevOps, ITIL, and this is a different governance model, and that's more difficult in more organizations. Can we agree together how we going to deliver value?
Yes.
Do we have the similar practices, the same naming? Do we have the same tooling together so that we can collaborate and work together? So that's more like on the internal stuff, like, okay, because a lot of people say, I still deliver on time and I'm low cost, so why do I need to do standard processes and tooling, right? Because that's more like internal governance. And then you say, well, if we use the same ways of working, we can better collaborate with each other and be more agile. But agile at the same time says we don't want to standardize our process and tools, so that governance is challenging always. And that's where value streams in the business also are now used. They're becoming also governance mechanisms. Like, we even get funding for value streams, right? You fund them, you get the teams focus around the value stream, so it becomes also a governance structure.
Yeah, and what I like about it is, one of the things I don't like about traditional IT, I don't want to offend anybody, is that we did what we thought was best. And I like us tying to what our business stakeholders want. We should tie every resource to delivering outcomes the way they want. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
we shouldn't have pet projects. We shouldn't be doing things that we think are cool unless they deliver value to our business customers. I know that
Right.
sounds very
Yeah.
strong, and I don't mean it that strong. I just mean we have to start tying, and that's why you mentioned technical debt. We too much delivered so much internally without tying it to what our business customers, stakeholders want.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's like, and that's the technical debt you mentioned. It's the challenge, right? It's not just delivering what the business stakeholders want now, but also,
Right.
is it sustainable? But that's the task for the product owner, to make sure it's balanced, right?
Yep.
Balance innovation versus technology debt. But you're right, and that comes back to governance, right? Would we deliver what we promise, but at the same time we make sure it's sustainable longer term, both in finance, risk, and environmental even nowadays, right? Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like, why do we need 26 BI tools, right? You know what I mean? Like,
For example, yeah.
yeah, that's because every organization has 8, 10, or more. And that's where I think of the governance, right? Because those BI tools are mainly, the business customer doesn't care how it's presented to them. And that's my go-to example on this stuff.
Yeah, but that's a good example, by the way, because in the value streams, let's say some business has an idea, and then we translate it into a solution, into production. That those kind of decisions are made there, right? Is it going to be SaaS? Is it homegrown? Where are we going to host it? We need to do a data privacy assessment, like where is the data stored? Those activities are part of this value stream.
Right.
And that makes value streams nowadays so complex. It's not about that the team says, oh yeah, I can deliver software and put it in production. No, this value stream is about end-to-end everything. We need to make sure the licenses with our vendors are up to date. We need to make sure the compliance is arranged. The security configuration is secure by design. And that makes these value streams so complex. It's not about putting some code in production like we think about in DevOps. Right. No, it's really about, like we mentioned, the security, the privacy, the continuity of our, let's say, technology debt aspects, the license management. So, and that's where everything in these value streams becoming like complex, right? And that's why we need to say, can we standardize that so it becomes simpler for teams to know what they need to do to deliver value? They can be onboarded on this value stream. It becomes like a train, where they say safe, right? Like you put your team on this train of a value stream, and you can deliver value, and you be compliant as well at the same time.
Yeah. And it's a known quantity. When you get on that train and you onboard a new whatever service onto that value stream, at least you know how to be compliant, how to be, reduce the risk, how to be secure. At least it's all proven And you mentioned the word template, and I like that. I like, let's templatize as much as we can. Why don't we standardize as much as we can?
Yeah, because a lot of metrics that you need to improve are also often the same, right? You can say, how long did it take, or where are delays? What are the security issues? You can make that visible, and we help the teams because the teams also need this information. And that's another reason why value stream management is for a lot of organizations complex, and because they don't have it today, not really at this. Like compliance, reporting of compliance becomes a lot of manual effort today because we have not put all the controls in the value stream. So it'd be part of the delivery model itself, as an example.
Right.
And that's why I think the last message that I think is important, that we have to design these value streams. It's not that this will just appear. So that's why you need somebody that's accountable for these value streams, as we mentioned, like a value stream engineer, or maybe even, and think about designing these. And then we say, oh, look at our current state. Why is our current value stream different than in the ideal world? And can we move to that? How can we measure that and continuously improve? But we need to start identifying them and looking at sometimes even looking at the perfect world. Like imagine our value stream would look like this, because then we would accelerate our delivery. And then you go back to the reality and say, why is that gap? How can we move closer to that? Because if you start just like looking at your current value streams, that's a good idea, by the way, like a Gamba walk, but then still you're stuck in, what does good look like? Right? Because then what do I need to improve? So you better have a kind of vision of what will be a good end-to-end value stream look like. And then you take that picture and look at your own value streams and, hey, why don't I do that? Oh yeah, maybe that's even a possibility for me.
Right. And culture.
And,
culture
yeah, not
plays
that one.
that's an underlying variable, right?
Yeah, I think culture is one of the challenges in these kind of approaches, because it's sometimes related to, can I define a kind of standard ways of working, how we deliver value together, how we collaborate together with all the teams and hand over, how is it done? But in a culture, it needs fit there, right? Do we all see the same vision and direction that we want to move into? And of course, teams get the independency to make the decisions, but they still fit in the context where they work in. And that context, they need to adopt and work together to create a common vision. And that requires the right leadership and culture. Yeah. Absolutely. Because before we know it, they have their own ways. They say, oh, I use my own deployment tools, my own. Who cares? Why do I need to update the CMDB anyway? I can do it my own way better, right?
We all think that way. We all think we're the sharpest tool in the shed. And so, exactly. I mean, like my way's better than theirs. And then you have a bunch of people that feel that way, and then it's a mess. And that gets back to governance and measurement and all those other topics. So Rob, it's been great having you back on. Any parting words you would like to leave us with?
No, I think the important thing is that I think any organization that wants to improve their IT function should really think about, and the example in the back, identify what are the key value streams I need in my organization, and starting to create a picture, what would be my ideal end state, and then transform and look at your own model and say, hey, what's happening? Why do I do it differently than I expected? And include the end-to-end flow. Yeah, take the end-to-end systematic approach, end-to-end view. That's already a big opportunity to many organizations. Just to work with the teams together, look how we end-to-end generate value to the customer. That's a good start.
Value is one of those tough things too, right? And I only say that, anyway, I don't want to get it off on a trail, but your value changes over time. And that's why these have to be fluid, and they have to be dynamic, and they have to be, you mentioned continuous improvement, right?
Yeah, you're right. You're never finished in this kind of work, right? And that's where I guess it's and like you see in the back, you use continuous, practices are changing over time. Now, for example, we use site reliability engineering to improve things. So we use maybe different tools. We have different roles in the organization. That will continuously happen, right? So, and that's where you need to cater for, because your value streams will evolve over time, but hopefully everything is maturing over time as well. It's not that we sometimes go down again in maturity and we try to redo it and we do some reorganization, but we continuously improve. That would be nice.
It would be nice. Rob, it's been great having you on the podcast. I hope you'll join us back sometime in the future talking about value streams or anything else. It's great having you on.
Thank you, Jeffrey, and have a good day as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.